Hey everybody, Chris here, and in this video I wanted to give you hopefully a condensed version of a channel update for like what's been going on the last few months. So in a nutshell, I've been really digging into my code and figuring out kind of what structure I want to build my actual game projects in. So what I've settled on is entity component systems, and the reason for that is that I want to build a simulation game, which generally those have like 10,000 characters moving around the screen at the same time. So you'd have one system processing a bunch of components, and then the entities own those components. So you might have like a different component for each feature that a character would be able to do. And then you have the entity which owns all of those components. So one of the big differences here is that the entities don't manage their logic, the systems do. So you'd have one system that runs process on a for loop for all of these 10,000 different components, and you'd have a bunch of different 10,000 different components because there's different elements, like you might have a grid component, a health component, a weapons component, things like that. So you'd have one system that needs to do each main function run on all of these components all at once. And in theory, it's more performant. So that's good for a sim. Now, of course, my channel has basically been about Godot for years, and I still want to keep making Godot content. But Godot is a node hierarchy, basically at its basis. And entity component systems tend to thrive on pure data. So a node basically is tied to the scene view and graphical visuals, things like controls or sprite 2Ds. Those are all graphics oriented, and typically you'd have animation player attached to each character, which manages the animation logic for that character itself. So in Godot, each object has its own logic. Now that doesn't have to be the case. So there are actually Godot ECS hybrid systems, and that's kind of where I'm looking at right now for that. Just as a better in general way to structure code, especially if you care about performance or you want to basically take advantage of the testability of having one system being responsible for all of the logic operating on these 10,000 different objects at once. So it makes it more predictable. And these tend to be static systems with static functions, so they don't maintain their own state. And in theory, that's a good thing. So then over here on the other side, kind of where I reached after going through C#, looking at C# Godot and C# Unity, which is actually kind of where I started from, Unity years back, which has dots and burst compiler for ECS inside of Unity. But the thing is, those are still hybrid systems. So your C# is hybrid still. And then Bevy is pure ECS. The downside is no editor. And then I think Rust is considered a harder language to learn. And I am still really new to that. I've only been basically spending like the last week or two trying to do some prototyping out in Rust, but I have kind of found the general development experience really solid for that. So far, I like Bevy a lot, but there's no editor, which makes it kind of very technical, whereas Godot is very visual, has a great editor, and GDScript, although I would definitely say it's harder to test than Rust, it's also fast prototyping. So on the Godot side, it's really good for platformers because those are very visual and physics-based, not so much pure data in a sense. Fast prototyping, as I already mentioned. Quick to understand for tutorials, I would say. I think Godot is probably one of the most, if not the most, beginner-friendly engines. I do want to keep making content for it, but I think one of the main differences is that I might be looking at these Godot ECS frameworking plugins. So this allows you to get a little bit better performance in Godot, which isn't the main point. What you really want out of that is architecture and testability, which with GDScript is kind of like a big question mark. And I'm sure that when it comes to Rust, the nature of it is that it has like out-of-the-box testing tools, and like the compile time checks are very solid out of the box tests. So I'm sure that at a certain point for testability, Rust definitely beats out GDScript. which is actually one of the main reasons I've been, so deep in the code and really trying to figure these things out, is that, in GDScript, it's easy to architect your code poorly and you end up with testing problems. And that just means you waste a lot of time staring at the screen. But that's because of the complexity of building things like my grid placement plugin, which I'm still, getting the next solid update on. It may actually be built with Godot ECS. And when I say Godot ECS, there's actually multiple plugins for that as a framework. So I'm kind of figuring out what's best there. So the next version may have this as like the solid final frameworking for the plugin going forward. But in a nutshell, GDScript testability kind of led me down this road. And I explored C# options like, what if you do ECS in Godot C#, or you go back to Unity or Unreal Engine or that kind of thing. But at a very basic idea, I just feel like if you're going to build ECS anyway, those other engines, you would be building a hybrid. But with Rust, it's ECS out of the box. So specifically because I'm building a sim out with ECS in mind, after going through a few different architectures, which way too long to explain for this video, I might build my production game in Bevy, which is the engine, and then Rust is the programming language. So what does this mean for the channel? Of course, we're going to get back into Godot content, but I also want to explore Godot ECS and see how far we can take that. Obviously, Godot, great for platformers, but what about other genres? Would it be solid for, maybe like a tactical turn-based RPG? Or do we have to push that more on the Bevy game engine side? So Bevy ECS, when I understand it better, is something I'd also like to cover on the channel, but I've only been working on it like a week or two. Initial thoughts, very promising, but it also has huge drawbacks, if you think it's a drawback. Like for one, it has no editor yet. Secondly, for example, it's got a pretty slow compile time. Rust is kind of often compared to C++. It's like the opposite end of the spectrum from GDScript, which is editor first, no compile, for GDScript at least. Because you can also build Godot in C#, but at that point, I just kind of ask myself, why not just go all the way? If you want to build ECS, you should use the ECS engine, which is Bevy. And when I say this, I mean in GDScript, because that's what people adopt the most. And it's really taking advantage of like the Godot ecosystem. When you do C#, it becomes kind of like you have to really use a separate editor and everything, which I would view as a good thing, but I think that would be pretty intimidating to a lot of people with Godot. I'm not sure. You can actually write in the comments if you think so or not. Do you use Visual Studio Code or Writer or anything like that? Or do you just stick to the Godot editor when you write your code? My guess is most people are in the game engine built-in editor. And I guess you would also say it's like syntax light, more readable, and so on. So this is like where beginners thrive, and it's great for tutorials. And I like building Godot tutorials, and I want to keep doing that. But, and I'm still exploring this, but at least in theory, this might be a better option for big commercial projects, because I want to build a sim, right? So that's a big asterisk there. And I would say if indie, as Unity and Unreal are industry standards. But on this channel, pretty much I'm building what I want because I'm doing it solo as well. So that's why I would consider Bevy ECS, but I would assume most companies probably aren't looking at it that seriously yet. And you know what, maybe the term big commercial is wrong then, because that would kind of imply AAA studios, right? So I guess I would say instead maybe it's good for performant ECS first projects in mind, and not everybody is going to necessarily end up on ECS. I kind of got to that point thinking about what I was trying to accomplish with a few months, and now I've kind of settled on that. That's probably the standard I want to build my serious projects out with. But, of course, there's a lot of nuance to that, as you can see. So in a nutshell, to summarize, I want to keep making Godot content. We're probably going to start diving into some ECS architecture, since I spent a lot of time to try to understand these concepts, so I think it would definitely be worth exploring on the channel. There's a lot of advantages here for tutorials. I'd like to, keep making content that helps beginners out, But Bevy might be interesting because it's so new that it might need tutorials. But that's with the huge caveat that I got to spend my time to like understand that more. So if I do Bevy content, it'll be very beginner stuff because, you know, I'm still super new to Rust. I haven't really proven it with my own projects, so to speak. Although, you know, I have some working terminal examples, but not like an actual fully functioning game in there yet. But the main thing I want to express there is that I will be making videos soon. So that's going to go for my plugins, but also tutorial content. And as soon as I have a good idea for a course, more courses too. So thanks for watching to the end. I was trying something new with this whiteboard thing out. I thought that would be more interesting than a code editor. Let me know if you like this style of video. So if I should do this more, mix it in with my code so that, you know, when I'm talking about it, I can actually visualize it with some diagrams and maybe less freehand drawing, but we'll see. So more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I've been Chris.